was quite extensive questions and some major highlights for this upcoming 2026 budget. I did send an email today, but I'll just reiterate. So based on what was presented in front of you, I did not have the general transportation aid final estimates yet for 26. I did receive those last Thursday, and the amount was coming in about 72,000 higher than I. With that, from my example that I put in the budget memo, that impact then, instead of about an $18 increase, based on like a 54% increase due to the revaluation, it brought it down to about $7 or $8. So much closer to pretty much status quo when it was. If they, there's some things we can do to potentially bring it down a little bit more, which we can talk through, but we just wanted to highlight that that was a positive with that extra revenue coming in to help balance things out a little bit more. Like I said, so with that, that was a positive news. So right now, with that adjustment, obviously I did not reprint pages for you since that just affected, like I said, the general transportation aid at this point. And then the general property taxes for the general funds, I did lower the 1.8 million by that 72,000 to once again bring us back into a balanced budget. So with where the levy stands right now between general fund, levy amounts, debt, and capital projects, the difference between 25 and 26 budget is $150,000. Of that 150,000, about 115,000 of the increase is due to the net new construction, which obviously we want to take advantage of. So if we want to get the levy down to exactly the difference of the net new construction, we have about $35,000 play with if we just want to increase the levy by that construction and keep things otherwise status quo from last year, other again than the net new construction. So with that, obviously I have some thoughts, but I wasn't sure if any of the board had any discussion items that might impact the budget. So towards the end, we can kind of circle back based on our discussions. And if that's the route you want to go, I can give you some of my thoughts on how we can do that using potentially one-time fund balance usage. And typically with that, we'll want to spell out the items that we're going to use it for, like a lawnmower, it should not be used for, continuing operational. It should be for like a one-time purchase or items that we can call up. So I do have a couple of those listed for discussion going forward. And then I just wanted to point out that obviously our debt payments have increased, slightly due to the fact that we took out debt. We did 2 issuances in the last year. So with that, for 2026 budget, we're at about a little over $1.8 million between principal and interest payments. But to keep in mind that for 2027, we're looking at close to $1.9 million that we'll need to pay for debt payments, again, principal and interest. And then in 2028, it'll go back down to 1.83. So again, something to keep in mind moving forward, that that's going to be increasing next year. So, that's, again, keeping in mind going into the future, looking at those amounts. Once again, we still don't know about health insurance increases. That's still up in the air, but as my memo stated, we baked in about 25%. So if we do get amounts in about mid-October, and that fluctuates, obviously that will impact the budget in a positive way. Hopefully, if it goes down from 25% to about 15%, that would be, close to a $30,000 savings in the general fund. But we've been unable to quote us at this time, so we projected something, but again, that could also fluctuate. So with that, I don't know if there's any overall questions, but I figured we kind of do a high level. I'd go through the departments. If anybody had any questions, we'd go from there and then kind of wrap up our discussion on where you want it to be moving forward, depending on what changes you have. So with that, I guess we'll start department by department. So we start on page 10. If you look at the middle, I guess the page number, that would be the village board. Was there any questions on any of the village board budget? Yes, yeah, because it's a 20-year comprehensive plan, so we so any questions? Otherwise, we can move on to general administration, which would start on page 15.
So just a quick question. Is there, and I don't know how you even budget for this, not only everything that's out there, but I think this year there were a few more opportunities that came up for us to get training and different things, and some of the stuff just didn't work in people's schedules. is there cost to some of that stuff that we would need to budget a little more for training? You know, if we go to a conference, for example, I think, you know, Shannon encouraged us to try to get to a couple of the,
There's $800 in the village board budget for that, and, you know, even if you have a pay that has an overnight, you know, like all 5 of you, you know, and we, that would be something that we would go to training to.
okay, sounds good, thank you.
And I should note that we also have some contingency, so if something were to come up, obviously there's some money that would warrant those opportunities, so. So I guess any questions about general administration at all? If not, any questions, I know these are smaller sections, but on elections, legal, or insurance? Well, that's got a question.
Trustee Lippert. Is general administration, I believe, where the IT manager would fit?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then I do have a couple questions.
Okay.
So I would like to discuss the IT manager that is proposed. I'm very much in support of IT help and having an IT position. It's definitely, I believe, more of a need than a want, especially some of the cybersecurity and some other things. I'm concerned about hiring a quote manager. I have a lot of IT background in my professional career, and a lot of times if you have just a manager, they're more into managing people and budget versus doing the day-to-day tasks of setting up computers or setting up doing network switches or just various different things. Chad and I have a couple emails back and forth. The Fox Valley has a higher, he did survey, I want to be fair here, he did survey the communities. There was a higher focus on IT. A lot of those communities also have probably some people under them. If you think about like a city of Appleton or some of these bigger municipalities, 2 of them had network system administrators. And what I believe we should be looking at in this is a hybrid approach like we did with Megan. Megan here with the clerk/HR manager, that I understand the need to have someone that maybe does have a little bit of management too. And talking with Chad, you know, down the road, you're thinking we may have future employee needs that they would be actually managing someone. So I would propose that we have that job description say network system administrator/IT manager. That way we can show that you're truly recruiting for someone that's going to do the day-to-day duties as well. The other thing that I would like to look at with that as we're budgeting this is, and this probably has to come back to our October board meeting, but I would also like to see us authorize said position where Chad can start recruiting for this November 1st type of thing, and let's get this person in here. And if they want to start in December, it works out, whatever. So that's my comments on that. I'll let fellow board members think.
So what sort of difference in compensation would that mean? Just like that.
I don't think we adjust. I'm okay. I know right now it's budgeted in the 90s, which if you have truly just a straight network systems administrator, you're going to be more in the upper 60s to low 70s. But I would leave the compensation cap there. That does give Chad flexibility as he recruits. That if he does find a manager, that's why I'm suggesting this slash. It does give Chad flexibility. It's not going to change the quote budget dollar. I wanted to have the discussion that we're talking budget here of since we're creating a new position that we were transparent with what we were creating.
So there's really no budget number change. It's just, you know what I'm saying?
Right, just the title. Yeah.
So I get it. So
And yeah, I mean, if the board's okay, I want to double check if that's the route you want to go, just to make sure my cover letters, if we're saying that we're going to budget for that we call it the appropriate title. So I mean, if everyone is on board with that, obviously I can ensure that gets updated. I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts based on Matt's comments.
trustee Bowen.
Some thoughts on, I worked in a large company for many years, and the board manager did not always do no direct reports for that person. It could simply mean that they were a single contributor, and their job description dictated what they earned, not necessarily, I should say what they did dictated what they earned, not their title necessarily. So I did not comment on it. I don't know a good deal about it, but I don't think it really makes any difference whether you call them a manager who just is a single contributor or an administrator.
Steve, you.
I believe that position was slotted in the waiver that seemed to be appropriately slotted. Chad, what's your opinion on whether it was the proper title, if you will, for that role? I mean, right now you're wearing all that. Do we need an IT manager?
So the reason that I thought we came up with the IT manager is I realized they're at this point they're not managing anything, although the HR manager is not managing anything either. So the thought pattern is that it was hoping to get somebody with a little bit higher strategic vision, long-term, experience to really kind of set us up. I realize we have day-to-day concerns, but we also have long-term concerns like servers that need to be updated and redundancy and cybersecurity and all of that kind of stuff. So I felt that the IT manager position would be, that title would be, we would get that higher level person. And I know there's concerns about, well, are they going to think that they're going to not do the day-to-day fixing the printer that doesn't work at the front counter? I think we can address that in the interview process to say we need a well-rounded person that can handle the day-to-day tasks, but can also kind of guide us through the future tasks. So I felt that the manager title would maybe be a little bit more beneficial in trying to get to more of a higher level person.
It would be to say that they would manage the department. As in the work, the whole business more than managing people.
Correct.
Right, we got lots to cover in here, so I know it's been probably some minutes on the job description that's probably gonna be debated probably before the next meeting, right? So as long as the conversation, if we're gonna leave it, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay, perfect. So with that, I know that was general administration. Did anybody have any questions about elections, legal or insurance? Of course, elections. And insurance looked a little different this year, due to the fact that I tried to, kind of allocate some of it up to the fire departments and other areas, versus prior years. So, you'll see that. And then obviously on the next page, the assessor, obviously our contract with Accurate is up at the end of this year. So obviously depending on where that goes, I put a little bit of an increase in there due to the fact that if a revaluation happens more often than 5 years, we're going to see an increased cost of that. So I put a modest increase in at that. So I guess any questions on any of those sections before moving on? All right, with that, so the next budget would be planning. Again, very status quo there, very similar to prior years, other than a new allocation for, pay. Chad's time is no longer in there. That's an administration, but otherwise.
I do have a question about that because in years past, when I was outsourcing, it was like $300,000 passed through. And the idea was, let's bring in our own person in here for the salary. We should be gaining that money instead of passing that through.
This isn't in planning, that's building inspection. Planning would be with Josh.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. Any questions on Village Hall Complex? If not, then from there, we'll go into law enforcement. Obviously, you'll see the increase there due to our annual contract with adding sergeants, and in 2026, we'll be adding another officer as well. So you'll see that slight increase due to that. Any further questions on anything with law enforcement? Oh, that's all.
Trustee Lancaster. Can you just remind me when we bill a law enforcement charge on the tax bill? Is that fourth quarter of last year through third quarter of this year? Is that right? Or how are you guys projecting that?
So Russ changed that with last year's budget.
Okay.
So it's now whatever goes on the tax bill is what we're budgeting for here. So that 1.27, it used to be in arrears, and last year before I came, he changed it to follow what the budget is.
Okay.
So the 1.27 will be what is divided out on the tax bill as that special charge.
Okay. Then I guess how are you truing up actual versus like if there's extra overtime or things like that? Because we should make sure that whatever it's under, we credit that back to. So there should be if we bill that full amount, we should be, I think, looking at where your end was going to be somehow there, shouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't obviously here for the discussion with Russ, but I mean, there's always a timing situation because even this past year, we didn't even get the fourth quarter bill. We had a bank for it, and that was in March or April. And we're still even getting billed right now from Calumet County based on last year's rates. Our monthly fee hasn't even increased, which it should have based on the fact that we added another officer from last year. So, obviously we can try to have some conversations with Calumet County to get a little more exact or see if they can give us better updated amounts. Because obviously everything can be dictated, like you said, on overtime, or do they change officers where we get a newer officer versus maybe someone more tenured, or they swap? I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into their calculation.
There's also the equipment and supplies and different things that happen throughout the year that are in there that we're not necessarily seeing. So I don't know, to our benefit, the county's kind of subsidizing the law enforcement. I say it that way, but until they get caught up in their billings, last year we had a decrease of a small decrease, a credit of $44,000, and we're like, well, how could that be? We had it in August.
So not dwell on this too long, so we got the cover. I guess my question would be, is there a way to have this be a special revenue fund and like our other revenue funds are, per se, where this money goes into that and any expenses for law enforcement, we pay out of that. That way we can watch the balance, and if we end up being short, we know we're short for a future year. If you have overage, then we can start to pay for it, or we can apply for taxpayers.
We're looking into that, that's an option. I'll make a note of that.
I guess that'd be my ask, that we're just so we track it and then not make it too common. That's our job. We just know we got this much revenue. We're spending this pot now, or we negative, then we gotta make it up.
Sure. So where does that money go? Does that go into the general fund and we pay out as needed?
So obviously whatever's on the tax roll will go into the revenue line item for law enforcement. So basically what the revenue says, what the expense is right now. So when we get that revenue monthly, well, depends on how far behind Calumet County is in billing, but monthly we get a bill from Calumet County to pay. It's supposed to be 1/12 of the contract. Like I said, the rate that Donna paid the last time is still the same rate that we were charged last year per month, which it should have increased. You know, I can't
They
control
will
the
come
billing.
back and say, hey,
At year end, we might be paying a $200,000 invoice. It's hard to say because we never get a status update. Well, certainly we can ask for it. I just, I don't know their timing. Yeah, it's, I mean, like I said, we had, I think, asked for the bill because we were trying to wrap up audit. We're like, hey, where's our December bill? Like where we at on this? And then we all of a sudden got a credit for December, and then we got January, February, and March's bill, like all in 1 month. So we're kind of at their mercy on some of that. But I mean, that is also deferring our payment to them as well.
we give the money
During tax collection.
collection, so they're all there.
And then we're just paying the money out to the county per month on what they're billing us, they invoice us. So
Does it make sense to put it in a different separate account or otherwise? I mean, as long as you've got it.
yeah, I mean, there's the revenue and there's the expense. I mean, there's not obviously it's just one line item for the contract, and then of course there's the crossing guard one. So I mean, it shouldn't be too hard to kind of look at that. We already have a special fund for law enforcement for I think those are from permit fees. So I don't know how many. I mean, I can look at it. Well, certainly I can get back to you on whether it's worth it or not. But we're talking one revenue line item to one expense line item. It's not too crazy.
So for my 2 cents, I wouldn't care how you do it.
Right.
But I just want to make sure we can account for the money,
Absolutely.
especially because that is a separate fee on the tax bill. So we need to make sure we're appropriately spending the said fee if we get questions from the taxpayers. And you have the will coming out there with all kinds of odd things sometimes and stuff like that. So I just think it's good to make sure that we're not just quote charging a fee and then also we're getting put in general fund and someone accuses us of getting around tax levy limits or something by adding our general fund with the money is why I'm.
If we can see how close we are and what kind of adjustments needed as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's move on to it.
All right, so from there then, fire and rescue. So I guess the only thing to note was this year, we pulled out the 2% dues. Obviously, we get money from state insurance. For that goes to specific fund, can only be used for certain items. So the revenue and the expense now we're put into a special revenue fund just to be able to basically on your audit, be able to show the fund balance of those and ensure that we're spending them and keeping everything separate in case we have another audit as well. And then we can break those expenses down a little more versus just throwing them all into one line item. We can break it up between training, etc. So other than that, like I said, we did put some money in the insurance line item here just to be more transparent for Sherwood for their portion, because in prior years we put a set dollar amount to the side, but it wasn't, if they were truly just looking at fire rescue, it wasn't 100% transparent. So that's why we just divvied up some of the insurance there. Again, they were charged prior years, but keeping it all in the fire budget. And that was a request also by our auditor. They wanted to see that as well. So
Has this been shared with Sherwood?
we did meet with them, was it like 2-3 weeks ago with the preliminary. So obviously after this meeting, we'll probably share another updated copy with them as well, but we have met with them once already. So with that, if there's no questions, then that would go into the building inspector. So we kind of mentioned before, one of the big highlights is obviously with Jason getting all his, working towards his certifications, you'll see that the contract line item was budgeted $90,000, which was probably pretty low for 25, but is now budgeted only at $40,000. Obviously, Jason is still looking to get a certification, so we will need a contract with Paul for some items until he's 100%. I'm not sure where he's at on the certifications, but we will need to contract with him to cover some of that until he's fully certified. And plus, if Jason goes on a week of vacation, we might want to fill in to keep things moving forward. So, like I said, you'll see that line item obviously drastically decreased there due to the fact that our internal staff is now being trained and getting all the certifications.
So we'll come forward in the next meeting with the contract for Birchbach Inspection Services, and they'll be providing commercial electrical and commercial plumbing, because Jason probably isn't going to be able to get those until 2027, just on the complexity of that. But right now he has all of the residential certifications and he's working towards the commercial building. And then hopefully we can ultimately get him where he's got all the certifications and we don't need to contract with somebody except for vacation back.
Frank wants to go for. Hold on. All right, go ahead.
You feel you're seeing adequate progress in his,
Oh yeah, to take a builder and get a builder to get all of the electrical, plumbing, residential, HVAC. I mean, it's pretty amazing to me that he's passing these tests and that he's getting the certifications. The commercial one is going to be a lot more detailed, so it's going to take him 3-4 months of studying to get to that point. But he has done very well.
Listen, from a commercial side of things, if we're signing a contract with Birchbach again, is there anything with that where we would actually have all the commercial and wouldn't rely on state anymore? I know we had an issue. Some municipalities do their own, they don't rely on state. So what does that take?
You can't do that. We have to be a class 2 city to do that. So Hamilton, frankly, is the only one that can do that by state statutes. Even if we have a commercial inspector, we're still going to be relying on the state. So we can collect it, and then they can go out and look at Smaller projects, I think it's 5,000 square feet and less, but anything over that is gonna be state limit.
Okay, so with that, no more questions. The next section will be Public Works.
Okay, one quick question, Allison, my notes here, back to general administration.
Okay.
Personnel total, the 2025 year end estimate is significantly below the budget for 2025,
So,
and the budget for 2026 is significantly higher.
so that's based on the allocation. So, basically, a lot of Chad's time currently, some of that's put to planning, some of it's put to DPW. So I don't believe like any of it right now is actually put to general administration. His time is allocated all over. So right now I'm leaving a portion of his time for next year to DPW, some is going to the sanitary, and then the remaining portion is going to stay in general administration. And then with the addition of, should say the replacement, before obviously Chad was the assistant planner, a lot of that salary was into the planning budget. Now that IT person, obviously when you're talking, potentially $100,000, 15% of that is going to the sanitary district, but that remaining portion will be staying in general administration. So it's kind of just a shift, there, make sure that the sanitary is paying their fair share of some of those services as well. But it should depend on how basically the time is being allocated. All of it staying in the general fund, other than ensuring sanitary pays for their portions, but it's just moving around from planning DPW into the appropriate slots at this point. And then obviously,
Operations and maintenance was similar.
Which budget are you talking about?
Under budget, but yet projected.
Are you talking about administration still, or Public Works?
So we get general administration, operations. Yes. Where year end is significantly under the budget, and they have the proposed budget.
Yep, so we obviously have a couple new, like one of the things, obviously like service contracts, I believe it was at the last meeting or the one before, we now have GovAI, that's obviously a slight increase. Was that just shy of $10,000 that was approved? So something like that,
Did we all carry a contingency like that?
Yep, and actually, so last year, it looked different over the 2025 budget. It was actually budgeted at 100,000. We brought forward a couple items to use contingency. So when that's done, that contingency line item lowers, and then that corresponding expense, let's say highway needed it, their highway would increase. So that was actually budgeted last year at 100,000. Because we're currently sitting with a $54,000 balance. I'm only projecting 75,000 for next year. So it does look a little odd from original, but that's because that contingency just got allocated up to a different department as well. Otherwise, with that would be next would be Public Works. Again, pretty uniform there. One of the changes was road maintenance. There's money slotted for some seal coating, crack filling. That would be on Horn Road, Coupler, I don't know. Oh, you know what I'm talking about. That road, Girdle Road, and then Lakeshore, there's some double chip seal. So just some smaller maintenance, but obviously that's slotted for next year. So there's a little bit of an increase from 2025 and the year-end projection compared to what will happen next year. But otherwise, everything else is fairly consistent. Actually, the operational maintenance for 26 is actually slightly lower than the 25 budget. So, but any specific questions on anything for Public Works?
Thank you. Did have one, and that's related to part-time and overtime wages. And I realized a good chunk of the overtime can go toward snow, and we have no control over that. And maybe this is more appropriate to discuss when we get tonight to the wage study. So if it is, just tell me and I'll wait till then. But I believe we need to look at our seasonal wages, and we need to split out seasonal non-CDL. So I'm thinking summer mowing help versus seasonal CDL drivers. And that seasonal CDL wage then needs to be higher by a few dollars at least, and maybe that'll help cut down some of the overtime where needed. We get more part-time help.
I mean, I will say that they do get paid more. Obviously, we have one person right now, I believe that is, but obviously Chad's trying to recruit for that, or so is Jeff, and it's a hard time recruiting for that. At this point, I don't know that there's been any candidates for that one, but I mean, either way, they are getting paid more to have that certification, but they're still technically considered full-time.
And what I've heard, because I've asked around, is the reason why we're having such a hard time recruiting is the wage is too low for someone that has their CDL. So,
okay. All right. Any other questions on anything related to Public Works? If not, then we'll move into Parks and Trails. One of the big things to note here is that there were just 2 new line items put in for dues and training in order for some of the park staff to be able to attend a conference. I believe that is the Wisconsin Park and Recreation Association. So just getting them more involved, but otherwise, once again, fairly status quo from prior years.
So in the past, there's been a lot of discussion about really showing the true cost of what it is to maintain parks. And Melissa and I had that discussion. I know last year was brought up about DPW staff time in there for the parks. we can't do that with the current software we have for tracking payroll, but should we move into the new enterprise system, which we're hoping to allow the staff to be able to dedicate their time on where they worked and get a better picture for where they're spending their time. So going forward in future budgets, we'll be able to put Park and Rec time into that, or we just don't have that capabilities with the current payroll system.
I just want to know, it would just be a lot more work for Donna to consistently keep splitting. We could, but it's just very time consuming. So what's the cost
We
benefit?
don't have the tools for that right now.
Okay, so if we could move forward and it can be a little smoother on that, or, you know, an online timesheet where they can kind of do that, we most certainly will work towards that. So,
You need to get there at some point so we can.
absolutely.
Well,
Yep.
they understand.
So then with that, next is all special revenues.
Actually, a couple questions here. So under maintenance, where is the, our park supervisor salary though?
That would be in public works.
So I do believe, since he is assigned to the parks, is he spending all his time in the parks?
No.
Or,
In the winter, he's plowing snow.
but, okay. So is there, I believe we need to at least account for him somehow, even if it's an approximate estimate, without having to, like, if you know during the summer that he is to the parks, and you know during the summer months, take 100% of his salary and do something here. I know it doesn't change bottom line, or I guess, or for sure, if we know that we're, I think I'm on board with, when we get to the software. I mean, if we're, we know for sure for next year, if we don't want to do too much, I guess I'm okay with it, but we definitely, as we go into 2027, because one of the big criticisms that we hear is that we don't spend enough money on our parks, and it's hard to explain to people that we.
Let's get the program.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we can work on tracking this year, like a potential percentage, and then a lot of systems you can automatically just put an allocation for each payroll. So if he kind of tracks his time throughout 26 and says, well, 75%, we can automatically set that allocation up and it will divvy it up accordingly. So yeah, we'll definitely work towards that. So with that, next would be all the special revenue funds, which would include park impact, loan.
Let's do ballrooms first.
Yes, thank you. The renovation program, 35,000, was that for village celebration?
Yes, the 35,000 is the fireworks, or the drone show, whatever we decide to do, and then the stuff we paid if you want us, if you want us to do the stuff in the park.
So I guess,
That was part of my question, so thank you. So we'll debate later if we're gonna do fireworks for the drone show. But I think with the new fire station opening, there might be some opportunity and more land depending on what's developed around there at the time, so that'll be good. The other thing to think about, and maybe it's software too, the future here, 2027, so it's fine what you got here. But I'd also encourage to start looking at from a park standpoint, we can have equipment, we got gas fuel, we got, you know, there's a lot of, you know, and that's part of the 45,000, is that part of fuel and all that kind of stuff, and the mowing and all that stuff, or where does that get? I don't know what's all in this 45,000.
So yes and no, there is some in there, and we have to figure that piece out in the fuel system. We also need to figure out, you know, depending on when this new park shelter at Farmers Field comes on board, if we're gonna have to heat that thing year round, we're gonna have additional expenses. So some of this is picking up some of that but not knowing, there's some flexibility in there, but not knowing the true cost until we get through at least, you know, get to that point. But yes,
Fair enough, thank you.
If you have no other questions, then we're on the special revenues on page 38 and starting on technically 40. So that's park impact fees. In which, again, some of these expenses for some of these special revenues are transparent in the capital project that are more outlined for what each project is worth. So we can always circle back on that. But I mean, if there's any specific questions on any of the special revenues, otherwise, like I said, once we get to capital, we can always circle back on what the 26 budget looks like. So like I said, those numbers typically are flowing through to these special funds. So.
but for some reason, all right, trustee Ball.
I just have a question, maybe I dropped this, but I have some of these impact fees were going to see to our, just the general taxes, which we're running on, or should I? Use these? It's kind of a law enforcement, yeah, I have never asked this question last year, as to whether or not that having a standalone fee on tax bills, or that could come into.
so these are different than those fees. So these are, okay, these are impact fees that are charged to new developments, the new construction. Okay.
Yeah, the only one that's not one of those, like I said, I moved those 2% dues out into its own special fund just to be more transparent. A lot of these other ones like Chet said are through permits. So like I said, we can circle back on that with the capital, but then on page 48, that would be debt service. I think I mentioned already and I touched on that, you know, 1.82 million, quite an increase, obviously, which is expected from back at the end of October, actually, for adjustments. Obviously, with brought the best he could with budgeting, but not knowing since debt was taken out at year end, and then of course this year, that's really hard to project what the payment schedule is going to look like. So as it stood right now, obviously about For year end for 25, debt service would be in the hole about 142,000. So I will be coming back in October. You'll see there's a transfer in slotted for year end, but I will be coming back to the board to approve that to ensure that we are not negative in debt service. But moving forward, obviously, we will be caught up whatever the general property tax levy portion that I slot there to cover, any of the principal and interest payments. So we're looking good for 26, but that was tough for him to estimate, not knowing what those payments were going to look like since they were going through the issues at the time. But like I mentioned, obviously next year, payments will be looking at closer to 1.9 million for principal and interest. And then in 28, we'll be back down to kind of close to what we are now, which will be 1.833. And our oldest debt issuance was taken out in 2020, and the last payment for that will be in 2030. So that'll be the first one to retire. And again, this is strictly just general fund. The TIDs, their payments will be accordingly in each TID. So any questions on debt service at this time? I'll answer that question.
Let's see, like this.
So I don't want to make extra work for you guys. So I'm asking if this is easy enough or not. So for transparency to the taxpayers, is it possible to split up that general property tax by roads, public works addition, and the fire station? Those are the three pieces that go into that. So we can correlate, like I do know the increased state share revenue is combined with the fire impact fees that we'll be collecting each year will come pretty close, if not make that debt service payment for the new fire station, for example. I just think we need to correlate some of that so taxpayers know where their money's going.
In one way,
But you'd have three lines of roads. To that payment for roads, the public works expansion.
We have more than that, though. We have capital, we have fleet.
Or would you, maybe it's okay, that's fine, maybe it's too complicated.
Yeah, I've never seen it broken down. I mean, it usually makes it simpler just because we depending on how many more debt issuances we have. I mean, you're not just talking, like I get the most recent one, but I mean, you're going back to look at the one from 2020. You know what I mean? Like, it's just going to keep compounding, especially roads and things like that. So, I don't know how many people are necessarily, I mean, obviously we can justify that if someone were to ask, we can talk through that with them, but I don't know that we want to get that specific.
Okay, that's fine, I just want to ask, so that's fine.
More entry goes for the tax road.
Okay, that's fine.
But I know that capital projects will be a big one, so if we want to save that for the end and kind of quick look over the TIDs and the utilities. So if we can go to page, 58. 58 starts all the TIDs. So I don't know, obviously we have 1 through 6. I know everybody's got a chance to look, so I don't know if anybody had any specific questions on.
go through the capital projects.
We will come back to that. Like I said, I just know that's the biggest one, so I just want to make sure we get through the rest and then we can finish with capital projects. So, I guess any specific questions on TID 1 through 6? I know Chad and I obviously went through this and we tried to use Barrett's plan that they presented at the last meeting to kind of fill in some of these amounts, trying to get accurate with sale of land and all of that.
Another question I have is, in the capital, it's going to be in our meeting tonight about the road plan and the crossroad development roads are listed in that road plan. Shouldn't that be in the TID? Why would that be budgeted under?
We just put it, it's says it's funded with TID too. Okay. In the road plan, we just wanted the public to see what we're gonna have each year for road improvements, even though it's alternate funding sources.
Yeah, so if there is a TID project, it might be listed in the full capital. You'll notice that each year we've got a column for the funding sources. So that's kind of where I was mentioning even those impact fees, if something were to be paid with stormwater impact, if you go to the stormwater impact budget, you'll see that that money is slotted there. But it's just in that massive capital plan, similar to the TIDs too. It might be in that, year by year capital plan, but the funding or the expenses will be in the corresponding TID. So any specific questions?
Thank you. More general question across the board on these TIDs, but specifically, for example, TIDs 5 and 6 that are negative right now. How are we tracking as money would come into these in the positive nature to make sure the general fund gets reimbursed back? Because obviously the general fund is having to front some money right now, or these wouldn't be negative.
So the general fund is only funded if they're negative because we haven't gone through the general fund. The general fund has only funded previous purchases, like for TID 5 of the land, that would be ultimately paid back in that calculation of the 45,000 per acre. That would be paid back once there's positive cash flow in there, but everything else is just being poured into the TIDs, and that's why they're obviously negative.
But who's paying the debt though? If they're negative, then is there some debt from debt? For example, TID 5, TID 5 though, for example, there's almost 1.5 billion in proceeds from debt this year. Someone's paying that interest. If there's not enough money coming in, that interest is got to be paid from the general fund, then, doesn't it?
Correct. I mean, yeah, obviously if it's in the whole, general fund.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just how are we? I want to make sure we're tracking that so we know when these payments get paid back.
Yeah, it's accounted for in the proper, but I mean that's kind of it's pretty common for the TIDs to be negative. Utilizing that. So I mean, typically unless the general
finance, so we're tracking those payments and then we'll pay those back when it's a positive.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions? If not, move on to the utility districts, which is starting on page 72. If there's any questions on anything for water and sewer.
So the only thing I would say is that it's a lot of status quo, but I would just say that going forward, there's going to be some need for water and sewer. So the city of Appleton is looking to expand and add some new aging, some new water tower storage tanks and other pressure zones. So there's going to be some need for looking at that long term. And then the Needham and Ashta sewage district has to do a huge amount of improvements to the tune of almost 35 million.
So it's 35 million.
Well, it's between 25 and
They've
35.
been talking about this for 4 or 5 years.
They have to now.
Now they, with the PFAS and the phosphorus requirements, they're forced to do it. So
They would have just did it like 3 years ago, it was only 20 million.
So-
And they just got around and didn't do anything, and now it's 35.
So there's some potential, additional costs for the utility folks from those projects that will have to look.
That's a pass, so that goes over the figures, right?
Yes.
Other than that, any questions on utilities? Otherwise, we'll move into everybody's favorite capital projects, which starts on page 51, and then the corresponding year capital request follow it. So, I don't know if anybody has any specific questions on that. But I kind of laid out, like I said, what was already slotted for debt. Obviously, we already took out that for those projects. So that slotted what will be used for levy, and then any of the columns after the levy, like I mentioned before, like park impact fees. That totals for 2026 530,000. And if you were to go to that park impact budget, you'll see that as an expense there. So
My only comment is, I know that we budgeted for the pay order, but we had to get it on order. I feel like we are hamstrung as a board because we already had to do it. Now we're looking at it and we really don't have any flexibility to say, well, maybe we should hold on for a year. You know what I'm saying?
right, and I mean, based on again what our fund balance looks like, I think after 2026, my recommendation would be for fund balance continues to stay healthy, that we do more of a reimbursement approach, where because we have a good fund balance, we can pay for the projects up front, and when the projects are approved, we do a reimbursement resolution, and then afterwards, basically, we can reimburse them through the pay mode, just because then we don't have arbitrage issues where we're not using all the funds and we know the exact dollar amounts of those type of items. So that would be my recommendation in talking with our auditors, who she said, especially for fund balance, it's fairly healthy that would be a better approach. Going forward to ensure we're just taking out what we need to. We don't have to just fill the project because we have extra money to use because of arbitrage issues and things like that. It would just, I think, align with us better. And then, we can maybe take 1 year off in 2027 on taking out debt, kind of pay off what we have before we're taking out more debt. And then we know again exactly how much we need to take out to reimburse ourselves. So maybe we can talk about that obviously moving into next year. That doesn't affect us this year, but that would be my recommendation moving forward with that. So, like I said, with that, obviously, I know, obviously 2026 through 2030 are on here. Obviously, 2026 is, kind of in everybody's foresight here with that being next year's budget. But I'm not sure if anybody has any general questions or concerns about any of this that Chad might have answered.
Yeah, I'll make this brief, but I tried to get everybody to have a couple. First is, how are we truly evaluating the replacement of when we need to replace equipment? I don't want to nickel and dime things, but I just want to make sure we're truly looking at needs versus nice to have. Is what we're replacing truly at the end of its useful life?
Yes.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
That's a one that you see in.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. I just want to make sure that we're truly. That's fair. That's fine. I trust you guys then. So
Yes, we're not just fine because we want to. So
then my other question on here, I'm looking at 2026, by the way. Is 5,000 really enough for a swing set at Farmers Field? That seems really light to me.
it's better not to it, and it's about 4,300.
Oh well, that's the trash then. Okay, keep going.
When I come to you, I can improve it.
That's how it's although because every time we have out there, someone says, "Why is there not a swing set at Farmers Field?" So that'd be nice to see. And then I'll keep going. Is there anything we should have had here for moving the sledding hill? I know you gotta get some public input, but I think that's probably gonna go over. We're gonna move that sledding hill next year. Hopefully, maybe if the public's okay with it. Well, we're talking about not having it no more as a board.
That would be under our works budget, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if we need to budget capital project for it, would just be staff time if we get to that point.
Okay, fair enough. Keep going. One more question. Last one. The Eisenhower extension between Midway and Manitowoc right now is in 2028, and I strongly believe that needs to be in 2026. We need to fix traffic concerns out here, and we need to get ahead of a larger county project for Midway, and we need to get, I know we got some other things in our regular board meeting approving some things, so I really believe we need to try to get that done in 2026 if at all possible.
My thought on that is we could adjust the plan if we had to, because it's TIF funded, and it won't affect the general fund if we had to push it.
Okay, Mr. Brandmeier.
That's the only thing I have. I thought we talked last year, if I remember correctly, we're gonna put a little bit more into we're truck pass through. We keep on going up.
Yeah, so because obviously they're still doing the study with Sherwood to see what the best way is to, charge them or the contracted price. So we don't obviously have that final amounts yet. So we did put 200,000 into for the tax levy, like status quo, like we've done in years past. So there is money, I think it's just shy of $1 million sitting in that escrow, but I believe about a year and a half ago, a truck was basically prepaid because it's what 3 times. So once we get the truck, that prepaid will go to an expense, and what's in that escrow account right now, which I guess is close to $1 million, will be wiped out to pay for that. It's like moving forward right now in the budget right now for 2026, but noted that you guys need a $1.5 million new apparatus. That once again we have to do prepayments. You have to to get that, which is why that funding is in other, because it will be a prepaid until we obviously take out debt and pay for it. But you know, if we have to keep doing these prepaids, it's tough to put money into an escrow account, and those, you know, obviously as life restrictions get tighter, things start to increase. Prime source, you know, and a good item to take out debt for because of its useful life. That, you know, putting 200,000 out of our levy each year to kind of put towards an escrow. You know, at some point there's going to be a better use of that 200,000, whether it's, you know, obviously we talked about a mechanic prior, but our budget's going to get tighter and tighter where we're not going to be able to put that aside. Like I said, that is a prime source for debt, because right now if we prepay this 1.5 million, that's at 200,000. I mean, that's going to take us 8 years to have enough, and by that point we're going to be needing to buy another truck, and it's just going to be a never-ending cycle where, again, we could utilize that 200,000 in better uses, but we wanted to keep it fairly status quo for 2026 because of that Sherwood contract, because we don't have a new way of charging them, or we don't have that narrowed down yet, so we wanted to keep things fairly similar than prior years. But next year my goal is to not put it there anymore. Obviously fire will still get their truck when they need it, we'll be taking out debt for that.
So if I heard you correctly, we have $1 million of debt. So Pierce never cashed that check.
They did. So when we bought it, they had to put it in a prepaid. So that's sitting as, you know, basically a liability. When we receive the truck, it then is expense, and that money will then be shown on the books that way. We pay for it, but it's just how you account for things. So it's a little different. Correct. Yes, it's zero. Yeah, it's zero right now technically. So it's so with that, I mean, I know we're kind of getting close to wrap up, and I don't know if, you know, anybody else has any other thoughts here, but I know a couple board members had made comments that they wanted to keep, lowering your assess rate as close to prior years possible. So like I mentioned before, as it stands right now, after that general transportation aid fix or impact with estimated amounts,
that would be the 150,000, right?
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yep, from 2025 to 2026, the increase in the levy right now was 150,000, or is 150,000. Of that, 115,000 is net new construction, which we want to ensure we take advantage of, because if we don't take it, we don't get that back in another year. So basically, if we want to put the levy increase only to the net new construction, that's different from $95,000. If we want to get to that point, my suggestion would be, if we look at the 2026 capital request, that Barron's zero-turn lawnmower is 25,000, and we have some computer upgrades for 10,000. Both together would equal that 35,000, and we could use those would be good items for one-time fund balance use to bring that back down. Like I said, that number for, you know, basically the assessed tax rate is an estimate, because now that board of review is closed, Accurate and the county will do their final assessment reports, and then I can finally get final numbers to get a little more exact, because right now I can only go off of estimates. But if, you know, just as our example, if I reduce that levy amount down by the 35,000, which for the two items I just talked about, in my home example, that difference of $7 now goes down to about $1.36 increase. So very, very close to.
So I'm gonna, man, I know what you're gonna say. I'm gonna say that due to the last state budget, they are increasing what schools can charge per student. So there will be a significant increase in school taxes. And the fact that we've had a lot of people's assessments jump around, whether they're above or below the 57% average. So there's going to be some adjustment. So it's just my contention that we, at least for this year, take whatever we need, and if it's 150 or whatever amount, out of general fund, because there's going to be some increase. We're adding an officer, right? So the law enforcement fee is going to increase. The school tax is going to increase. I think if we can do our due diligence, say, hey, for 150,000 to make sure the village gets at least keeps things at least even, you know, it will be less of a contention on our part, your part, to explain why. Well, I mean, this happens every tax year. Well, why my taxes go up so much? Let's look at, you know.
I want to just clarify, like I said, the difference was 150 total increase of levy, but again, of that, 115,000 is net new construction. So that difference would be that 35,000. That, like I said, we could use those one fund balances. So if everybody on the board is okay with that, I can go make that update and reflect that accordingly. If everyone wants to take that $25,000 lower and those $10,000 for the computer upgrades, again, that just happens to relate to about 35,000.
35,000 out of the fund balance.
So, okay, so then I will make sure that your next copy, I will make those adjustments, and then obviously, hopefully by the next meeting, everybody's got the reports done to the state, and I can have final numbers and give a better estimate than my quick estimate right now. But it should be pretty well in line with what somebody's been paying prior. Someone in the office who went up 54%, so that's fairly close to the average. But I'm hoping to have, you know, more concrete numbers than maybe.
The next step here for you, and where we got to go with it. And sure, like getting the numbers from the county, so we can kind of know in our minds, or you guys can write down like what the schedule's gonna look
Yep.
like.
So absolutely. So right now, obviously, we had October 8th slotted for a budget workshop. I'm not sure if you all are comfortable with where things lie, if that meeting would be needed or not. I know we ran through everything. I don't know if you think that meeting's necessary or not. So that would be step one to see if that October 8th workshop is necessary or not. After that, then I need to file a public notice, which has to be filed 15 days prior to the October board meeting, because at that meeting, that would be our public hearing to the public. I'll give a brief, a quick presentation on the budget. Everything goes okay. If there's any comments, I can adjust accordingly. But then I believe November 11th, that second Tuesday, I believe in November, that would be the budget adoption. That would give us enough time to ensure that it's adopted, to then get the information over to the county to start compiling ours, the school district, all the taxing jurisdictions, start compiling all the data, and then hopefully, obviously, early December, then be able to get tax bills out the door to our residents. So I'm not sure the feeling on if the 8th workshop is necessary, but I'll leave that later discussion.
Meeting on the 8th?
Well said, thank you. Yes,
All right, so I think the board,
perfect.
good job on
Thank
this,
you.
and I know we only got a few seconds left, so I appreciate the time, and the most good discussion. Maddie, I'll give you 10 seconds, and then you can make a motion to adjourn.
So I'm sorry, I just had a comment on the law enforcement fee. I'm glad we're keeping the levy where we are, because there is going to be an increase in the law enforcement fee, which is, we've got a lot of concerns around traffic and all that, so we're trying to address some of that stuff. And just to Trustee Baldwin's question, it's important that this stays as a fee because of the number of apartment complexes that we have in tax incremental districts. If you shift it to the levy, even if you could, you have to see if you could because of levy limits, but let's say we could, now all of a sudden you apartment complexes, and they pay that money, including the TIBs, and the village doesn't see it, now you just shifted all the law enforcement costs for the apartment complexes to the taxpayer living in the single family homes. So as long as those apartment complexes are in TIBs, let's actually have fee, because the apartment complexes, that's what they pay, and that fee goes directly to law enforcement, and doesn't go into the TIB. So that's why it has to be a fee. So thank you, and I'll make motion to adjourn.
The motion to adjourn, second. I'm with Trustee Baldwin, second. Those in favor say aye. Aye, all right. Meeting is adjourned. You need to shut the.
I just paused it.
Back up, please. Yeah, you guys do this water. It was baby shark. Sounds like they play a game. What? It's not like baby water. I think it's pretty. You can have a little sound, but no. Sure, what? It's like I have to probably.
Brian, it's 6:01. I call this meeting to order, and before we do the pledge of allegiance, I will ask that everyone after the pledge of allegiance have a moment of silence for Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated on September 10th for speaking what he believed in. Thank you.
When the agency of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
No, after roll call, Trustee Lancaster. Trustee Brennmeyer. Trustee Van Hefty's excuse was given. Trustee Baldwin. And Trustee here, we have a quorum. Next up is identification of potential conflicts of interest. Anyone that has any conflicts with any issues on the agenda? If not, next up we have correspondence or communication from board and staff. I believe there was an email from a lady that you all got. Everybody got that? Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Just want to say that I sent an email out today about the change of our email addresses. We're going to wi.gov versus .org. It should affect the day-to-day. But if anybody in the trustee-wise has any concerns or issues, let me know. We'll try to rectify them. It should be both email addresses should work for a while until we convert over to the .gov. But for security reasons, it's recommended to have .gov versus the .org.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Lancaster.
I just want to thank all village staff for all of their hard work in the budget process so far. They're very well put together, very well done. So,
and then I also want to commend Tammy Forsetto on the planning commission. I've gotten some really good comments about how she's doing a really good job of leading the planning commission. So kudos to Tammy. Next up, we have corrections and approval of the previous meeting minutes. We have the August 26, 2025 budget visiting session meeting minutes. Looking for a motion in a second for that one.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 28, 2025 as presented.
Trustee Lancaster.
just want to clarify, August 26th, correct?
Yes.
And then also,
August 26th.
and for everything else like that.
So I have a motion by Trustee Baldwin and a second by Trustee Lancaster. Any discussion? Having no discussion, please vote your ballots. And the motion passes with one abstention. Next up, we have the meeting minutes for August 26th, the village board meeting minutes. Trustee Lancaster, motion to approve. Trustee Field. So we have a motion by Trustee Lancaster, second by Trustee Field. Any discussion? There being no discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes with one abstention. Next up, we have the September 9th special meeting. Looking for a motion to second the voting minutes. Trustee Baldwin.
I make a motion to approve.
Trustee Field. So we have a motion by Trustee Baldwin and a second by Trustee Field. Any discussion? Trustee Lancaster.
Going to make a motion to amend the minute on September 9th. Item D under ethics training, I believe if there's no action taken, I should say training completed.
So let's go ahead and do this properly. Are you making a motion to amend? So I need a second. Okay, we got a second by Trustee Kaufman for the amendment. Those in favor of the amendment, let's do a roll call vote. Trustee Lancaster. Trustee Bremer. Aye. So the amendment is approved. So the original motion is on the table to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Okay, go ahead and vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have public comments. The board will receive information from the public in accordance with state statute 19.84. Be advised, board discussion is limited to only clarifying information received. No action shall be taken under public comments. General procedure is to allow each person 3 minutes to speak, although the president may grant extensions, reduce time, or limit the number of like-minded persons on the same topic. Anyone wishing to speak should register their name on the sign-in sheet prior to the start of the meeting. Anyone here not signed up wishing to speak? If not, we first have Amanda.
Yeah.
Okay. You wish to speak? No. Oh, okay. Okay. So we have Rebecca. She didn't sign up. We got Drew and Aston.
On the lights,
I'm Drew Heston, and I'm on N9132 Granite Drive. I just listened to the last month's board meeting and I had a couple of comments I wanted to add on my opinion. So for the tree policy, you did mention that there was a $2 million that Appleton had to pick up leaves. For how many times you've discussed this topic, I think it might be wise to just give an estimate on what the impact to property taxes would be, because it'd be easier to speak to them. But I would not be in favor of a significant increase in my taxes for leaf pickup in the village. I am in favor if it's less than $5 if the property tax is increased by that much to allow using the yard waste site for free after confirming the address, if that's ever been considered or discussed. For the trail system, I am in favor of expanding it. I'm in favor of sidewalks on only one side of the road as opposed to two in a lot of cases we see in cities, as was discussed last month. Also, I am in favor of the case-by-case decisions, as mentioned as well. I don't agree that there should be a specific policy on sidewalks, but I do believe that maybe there should be a guidelines document made so that there's better clarity on why we make certain decisions for the residents. I'm in favor of the trail system tie cliff as well. I don't know where that is on. And then my last note is e-bikes. I believe e-bikes should not be restricted on roads any differently than pedal bikes. I have concerns with section 26-14, the regulation of e-bike scooters and e-bicycles not to operate or ride upon e-bikes with the speed limit of more than 35 miles an hour. We have some 45-mile-an-hour roads that do serve as a connection between trails and subdivision, as well as in order to get to Appleton efficiently. So e-bikes are an alternate form of transportation to get to work. In my case, I bike to work at times, and an alternate method of exercise for the elderly and disabled and others. I wouldn't want this decision to exclude certain roads, such as 45-mile-an-hour roads, to negatively impact and affect current lifestyle of residents such as myself. When making these decisions, please consider parents with release that are pulling kids that are can be 100 pounds, as well as e-bikes is another alternative to pedal bikes to allow that transportation and other family activities such as that. Just to finish up, I believe e-bikes should not be restricted, or I believe that I'm in favor of adding, let's see, instead of restricting completely, I would rather add layers of safety requirements such as lights, helmets, age restrictions, and vests. And then I am also in favor of allowing e-bikes on native trails and trails that, but with an added layer of safety features such as audible noises, speed, or other safety measures. And that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, thank you. There's something we're going to discuss later on about that. So,
Yep. Okay, thanks.
anyone else wishing to come up and speak? There's not. So I'm going to close the public comments, and then we're off to reports. Everyone had the ability to see the report. And anyone have any questions, or anyone from the staff want to say anything about the report at all? If not, let's go ahead and get to the approval of the bills and claims. So we're going to need a motion and a second to approve the bills and claims for August 2025. Trustee Baldwin.
I'll make a motion to approve bills and claims for August 2025.
We have a motion by Trustee Baldwin. So we have a second by Trustee Bremer. Any discussion on the bills and claims for August 2025? Having no discussion, please vote your ballot. And the motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have 9, no business. Wow, we have no business. That's great. All right, we're up to 10A.
All right, this is the wage and compensation study results by Public Administration Associates LLC, and the motion is to approve the Public Administration Associates PAA LLC wage and compensation study, including the 2026 wage scale as provided on page 8.
So if I may, Dave from PAA is here, and I keep doing a couple comments or not?
It's up to the board. I'm here to answer any questions, but I can make it. I don't know what's wrong with them. I don't want to take time. Trustee Lancaster.
I do have one question, and that is on page 8 for the wage scale itself. With the seasonal, my side here, for the seasonal employees. That I do believe that if we look at our public works crew, minimum starting would be going to 2574 versus a seasonal of 19, and we have a lot of our public works is when you be close to step 1. That's just step 1 there. And you also have benefits that a full-time employee gets, so like seasonal does not get benefits, so you still do, which is a significant thing to have benefits. So there is still a difference in your seasonal employee versus how you're treating full-time employees. That I believe we need to have 2 classifications of seasonal employees filled out here. One non-CDL, would be your summer lawnmower vehicle. So, and a new seasonal classification of seasonal with a CDL, and that should be minimum $25 per hour then, because I know you're gonna hard time recruiting drivers. I think you would have much more success with the higher level.
Dave, can you come up with a podium for this? Can you turn the mic on?
Hi, Dave Tebow from Public Administration Associates. Concerning the seasonal, our feedback from the peer communities were very low. I think we were getting feedback from high school, college seasonals, and so what we actually, or I proposed putting in here was your rate. Your rate was 19 to 25 currently. So I totally agree with your point. I mean, I think you need to have 2 levels of seasonal, and I would recommend that as well. You kind of made a habit of hiring skilled employees to do some of your work, and I didn't get feedback in the survey from kind of that skilled seasonal level. Yeah, so I think that's where we're having trouble because we have requirements, but you got to pay more, and so I think we need to have that. Is that something that you could brush up and bring back maybe? Or I could come up with something, right?
Yeah,
Where would that?
everyone can work together and bring something back to the next month's meeting with a proposal on what this might look like.
Yeah. Okay. So everything else is good, guys. And, all right. So I guess.
So a question for Chad, so you can move forward with us. Would you want a motion approving contingent on just an extra seasonal classification here, and then rest of the wages are approved?
I mean, do you need it right away?
Well, it probably would hurt. We're having a hard time recruiting winter seasonal help. We've been advertising all over for the last 3 months. We've got no money.
So how about we just approve this and then we just bring back and we amend the version?
I would like to approve a seasonal range so that he can update his recruitment. We don't lose another month in recruiting people.
I know that's what I'm saying is that we approve this as is, and then he just comes back and refines it, and then we just approve the amended version, right?
But that gets Chad another month of not being able to recruit at a higher wage for seasonal help that he's trying to recruit right now for.
True.
I would like this. I mean, we'll have to clean up the paperwork, but I would like to approve tonight that we are approving a seasonal CDL classification with a minimum of 25. I mean, and then they can do their work without having to come back to us.
That was
All right, so in order to make this work properly,
amendment.
okay, is that okay?
yeah. I would take the original action and amend that to include this, and then vote on the amendment regional action.
I'll make a motion to approve the wage study.
I think there's a
Trustee
certain
Brenner. So we got a motion by Trustee Lancaster and a second by Trustee Brenner. Discussion?
just a clarification. Don't you want to vote on the amendment? Do the amendment first,
Yeah,
and then
we're gonna do this, and then he's gonna make an amendment. And then
but you already voted on this, so you have to vote on the amendment first.
you gotta make the motion in a second, and then make the amendment, and then vote on it, and then it goes back to the state. Am I right on that?
Yes.
Trustee Lancaster.
We're gonna make a motion to amend the wage chart on page 8 to add a additional classification that would say seasonal employee with a CDL with a minimum starting wage of $25 per hour. And for staff to have the authorization to work out the chart from there.
Trustee Brenner. Second. So we have a amendments, motion, and a second. Any discussion? Having no discussion, we're gonna do a roll call vote on the amendments. Trustee Lancaster. Trustee Brenner. Aye. So we pass the amendments unanimously. Now go back to the original motion on the table. Any further discussion on that? If no further discussion, let's go ahead and vote our ballots. Thank you, by the way. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Chad, you'll work out the details then.
Yeah, I'll connect with you.
10B,
All right, this is a site plan review for Queen of Cleaning, W5006 Amy Avenue, parcel 45302. The motion is to approve the site plan for Queen of Cleaning, W5006 Amy Avenue with the following conditions. Number one, a detailed site plan review pursuant to Article 111 of the zoning ordinance shall be completed prior to issuance of zoning and building permit. Number two, the site plan subject to the review and recommendations of the Village of Harrison's engineer of record. Number three, a grading and drainage stormwater management plan and erosion control plan shall be reviewed and approved by the village engineer and village staff. Number four, village staff recommends an exception to the 25-foot rear setback. This request is due to the unique site conditions. The rear of the property abuts a parking lot to the north, and as a corner lot, the site is subject to two 25-foot front yard setbacks, which already limits the buildable area. Number five, only those uses permitted in the applicable zoning district shall be allowed within the development. 6, all applicable local, county, and state rules, regulations, and ordinances shall be. And number 7, no off-premise signs are allowed in the village right away.
okay, so I got trustee Teal,
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan for Queen at 5006 Amy Avenue. Per the attached printed and circulated conditions.
trustee Baldwin. So we have a motion by trustee Teal and a second by trustee Baldwin. Just for everyone here, the planning commission did approve this item, so discussion. If there's no further discussion, please vote your ballot.